Okay, so for the first question, we are asked to put these numbers in order of size. Now, they're negative numbers and positive numbers, so if you get confused with them, then just think of your negative number line as a thermometer. 0 marks the change between going from positive to negative, and with our positive numbers, we're always just going up by 1, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and the further up we go, the larger the number becomes. So the bigger the number on the positive side, the larger the number is. With the negatives, however, it's like a mirror reflection of what happens on the positives. So we'd go -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. And the further down we go, the smaller the number becomes. So your largest number would be your largest positive number, and your smallest number would be your the number that's furthest down the number line. So like the larger the number is, but with a negative sign in front of it, the smaller it actually is. So out of these numbers, we want to start with the smallest number first, and the smallest number is going to be a negative. So we look at the negatives, and then we think on this number line, which number would be furthest down the number line? Or another way you could think of it is if it was a temperature, which temperature would be colder? So -5 would be the smallest number, followed by -3 and -1. We could just look at it using this number line. -1, 5 goes first, and then we come across -3, and then -1 or -1. Then we've got 0, which is the bridge. It's like the stop point between negative and positive numbers. And then we'd have 5. So that's how we'd order those numbers. Sometimes negatives can get a bit confusing, but the smaller the number is, the bigger it would be if it was an integer. So like -500 is smaller than any of these numbers, even though if it was +500, it would be the biggest number. So it's like the further they are from 0 on each side, the bigger or the smaller they are. Okay, next we are told to write 43% as a fraction. So you do have your calculator, you could do fancy tricks on it, but all you need to know is that percent means out of 100. So whenever you're asked to turn a percentage into a fraction or a decimal, all you do is you write it out of 100 or over 100. So 43% is just 43 out of 100. And it's not asked you to simplify it, so you can just leave it like that. And this will really help you for any kind of percentage kind of questions. Just to write a percentage as a fraction or a decimal, write it over 100, and then to turn it to a decimal, we just actually do 43 divided by 100, because this line here means divide. But as a fraction, we just leave it like this. Next, we're asked to write down the 9th odd number. So our first odd number would be 1. Our next number is 2. That's not odd, so the next odd number would be 3. So odd numbers are literally every other number if you start from 1. So you've got 1, you'd have 2, which is your even, you'd have 4, but I'm missing them because odd numbers are every other number. So I'd have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the 9th odd number would be 17. It's just a case over here of writing out your odd numbers and remembering that odd numbers are anything that is not an even number, and an even number is anything that is a multiple of 2. So we can just write the even numbers up here, and they're just your directed numbers. They're just your numbers going counting up from 1. Okay, in this question we're asked to find the value of 6 to the power 4. So when you see the word find the value of, it means actually write down what this number is. So 6 to the power 4, there's a few ways we can do this. You can either type it into your calculator. So you type in 6 and then you have the power button, which is that one there. And then it gives you like a little space for the little indice, and you press 4. And then it will tell you that's 1,296. Or we know what, when something is to the power of something, it means it's being multiplied by itself. So 6 to the power 4 means 6 times 6 times 6 times 6. The 4 tells me how many times 6 is being multiplied by itself. So I could also just do 6 times 6 times 6 times 6 in my calculator. But either way, the value of that would be 1,296. Okay, next we've got question that incorporates speed and time. So I'm told that Faisal and Jaden arrive at the cinema by bike at 11:30 a.m. Faisal lives 4 kilometers from the cinema and Jaden lives 6 kilometers from the cinema. Faisal left home at 10:45 a.m. and Jaden left home half an hour earlier. Who travelled the fastest speed on their journey to the cinema? So we probably want to do some fact finding and write down the information that I know. So Faisal, he lives 4 kilometers from the cinema, and he left at 10:45 a.m. So if they both arrive by bike by 11:30 a.m, I can figure out how long it must have taken him. So from 10:45 to 11 a.m, that's 15 minutes. I mean, obviously some of you might be able to do this in your head, which is great. But if you don't, then just you chunk the time. So from 10:45, you add on 15 minutes to get to 11, and then to 11:30, you know that's 30 minutes. So in total, that's 15 plus 30, which is 45 minutes. So his the time it took him is 45 minutes. Now, Jaden, what do we know about Jaden? He lives 6 kilometers away, and he left home half an hour earlier than Faisal. So if Faisal left at 10:45, that means that Jaden must have left at 10:15 a.m. So we take away half an hour. And if he left half an hour earlier, then that means that it took him 45 minutes plus half an hour, which is 30 minutes. So his total travel time would be 45 plus 30, which is 75 minutes. Now, what it's asking me for is who travelled the fastest speed on their journey. So how do I work out speed? Hopefully you know the formula. Speed equals distance divided by time. If you ever get confused and you freak out, just think to yourself, what's the national speed limit, or just what is any speed limit you've seen on a street sign in your life. So you might have seen, I don't know why my voice went like that, you might have seen 30 miles per hour. So what does that mean? Well, 30 is telling us what the speed is, that's the speed limit. Miles is a measure of distance, per means out of, and hour is a measure of time. So therefore speed must equal distance over time. So that's a good way to just remember that formula if you forget. But that's the formula that I want to be using. So another thing is, if we're generally working, unless it's a specific question that's talking about meters per second, you're going to be working in units per hour. So what people always get confused is they say speed must equal distance, which is 4 kilometers, divided by time, which is 45 minutes. But that is not what you want to do, because when we're talking about speed, we're talking generally in terms of an hour. So what you want to do is turn your minutes into a fraction of an hour. So the way you do that is you could write 45 over 60, type it into your calculator. So 45 divided by 60 gives you 3/4. You press the format and then decimal, and that tells you it's 0.75. So 45 minutes is 3/4 of an hour, which is 0.75 of an hour. So that's how we'd work out Faisal's speed. And then Jaden, we do the same thing. So speed is distance divided by time, and 75 minutes, once again, to turn it into an hour, we do 75 over 60, because there's 60 minutes in an hour. So 75 divided by 60 is 1.25. So then we have two speeds for Faisal. We do 4 divided by 0.75, which is 5.3 3 recurring kilometers per hour. And for Jaden, we've got 6 divided by 1.25, which is 4.8 kilometers per hour. So who travelled at the fastest speed? We'd say Jaden did. As his speed was the faster the speed, the larger the speed, the faster you're going. So Faisal travelled faster as his speed is higher than Jaden. And obviously you need your all of your working out for this. Okay, so in this question we're told that there are 32 rows of seats in a cinema and there are 18 seats in each row. So there are 32 lots of rows which have 18 seats in each of them. It might help to just try and visualize that so that you can figure out what you might have to do. So there's 32 rows, each of them have 18 seats in them. I'm not going to draw 38 out, but just to help you visualize. So Maida went to the premiere of a show at the cinema. Each ticket for the premiere cost £13.75, and the tickets that were sold cost a total of £7,040. How many tickets were not sold? So it might not instantly be clear what you need to do here. So that's why it's helpful to just draw out the diagram so that you can think, okay, what could I figure out? Well, we haven't been told how many seats there are in total. And in order to know how many tickets were not sold, we need to know how many seats there were in total. So there are 32 of these rows with 18 seats in each of them. So I could either do repeated addition, 18 plus 18 plus 18 plus 18, 32 times, but that's why I use multiplication, because multiplication is the shortcut for repeated addition. So instead of doing 18 plus 18 plus 18 32 times, I just do 18 times by 32. And the reason I'm multiplying is to figure out how many seats there are in total. So 18 times by 32 is 576. So I know that there are in the cinema 576 in total. So 576 seats. Now, I know that each seat has the potential to be sold, and if I did sell each seat, that's £13.75 that I would have charged. But the tickets that were sold cost a total of £7,040. So what I can do is figure out how many tickets must have been sold by dividing. If I had something simpler, like let's say £10, and I knew that I bought sorry, I got distracted. So if I had £10 and let's say I know that a can of Coke costs £2, how could I figure out how many cans of Coke that I bought? Well, I would do 10 divided by 2, because that is the and I don't know what that is, because that is the cost of a can. So similarly, I know that 7,040, if I divide it by £13.75, that will tell me how many tickets I bought, just like dividing by 2, which is the cost of a Coke can, would have told me how many bottles of that I bought. So 7,040 divided by 13.75 is 512. So that means 512 tickets were sold. And the question is asking me how many tickets were not sold. So I'm just going to work out what the difference is. And to work out the difference between two numbers, I subtract the smallest from the largest. So I'm going to do 576, take away 512, which is 64. So 64 tickets were not sold. Okay, next I'm told that Arash asked the people in his maths class what their favourite fruit was. His results are shown in the table below. So 8 people So over here we've got the frequency. Frequency just means in the amount. So in this question we're being asked about the people in his class, the students in his class. So in this case the frequency means the number of students. So it means that 8 people liked pineapple, 12 liked mango, 4 liked pear, and 6 liked kiwi. And I'm asked which type of fruit is the mode. The mode is the most common value. So to work out what the mode is from a frequency table, we look at the frequency column and we find the highest number here. So 12 is the largest number. So the mode is mango, which is a very tasty fruit. In the results, 12 out of 30 students like mango the best. Write 12 out of 30 as a percentage. So 12 out of 30, first of all, I'm actually just going to write that as a fraction. To turn any number out of a total into a fraction, you write the total as your denominator. And then this little line can serve to mean out of. So 12 out of 30 students like mango the best. And I need to turn this into a percentage. So to turn a fraction into a percentage, all I do is I write it as a fraction. So I type 12 divided by 30 into my calculator, and then I times it by 100. Because if I typed 12 divided by 30 into my calculator, it would then tell me that that's 0.4. So that's turned it into a decimal for me. And to turn a decimal to a percentage, you multiply by 100. So that times by 100 is 40%. So that's how I do that. So fraction to percentage, write it as a fraction into your calculator and times it by 100. Then I'm told to draw an accurate pie chart for the information in this table. So what I need to remember is in a pie chart is a circle, and at the center of a circle is a point, and angles around a point sum to 360. So angles in a circle from the center, they sum to 360. So that's what you should always be thinking of when you think about a pie chart. So we know that the angles inside a pie chart are going to sum to 360 degrees. Therefore, what we're doing is we know this circle, all of the angles inside here, so this plus this plus this, they are going to sum to 360. Therefore, we're splitting this pie chart into the total amount of frequency. So I know that there are 30 students in total. So what I always do to work out the angle each thing is worth, I do 360 divided by the frequency total. In this case, that's 30. So I'm going to do 360 divided by 30. And 360 divided by 30 is 12 degrees. So that tells me that one person on this pie chart is equal to 12 degrees. So pie chart is 360 degrees, and I've split it into 30 people because that's how many people are in the question. So now that I know that one person is equal to 12 degrees, if there are 8 people, what I'm going to have to do is 8 times 12. For 12 people, I do 12 times 12. For 4 people, I do 4 times 12, and so on. So 8 times 12 is 96 degrees. So pineapple is going to be 96 degrees. Then I've got mango, so 12 times 12 is 144 degrees. So mango is 144 degrees. Then I do 4 times 12, which is 36, which is 48. That's why it's great to use a calculator in case you make a little mistake. So pear is 48 degrees. And then you've got kiwi, which is 6 times 12. So 6 times 12 is 72 degrees. So kiwi is 72 degrees. So to double check that this is correct, all of your angles should add up to 360. So let's double check. 96 plus 144 plus 48 plus 72 is 360. So then you can feel confident that you've done this right. Also, your pie chart, when you draw it, it won't join up. that's a big red flag that you've done something wrong. So just recalculate it, because you might have just typed something in wrong into your calculator. So when you've got a question like this, you line up your compass over here, your protractor, sorry, you line it up on top of the line, and the little 0 bit needs to be right here in the middle. And then you start from either the outside on the left or the outside on the right, depending where the 0 is, and you follow it across. So you follow it across until you see 96 degrees, where you draw a little point there, and then you join the line together. So over here, that's 96 degrees. You'd label the angle and you'd label the sector. So this is pineapple. Then I'd do the same for mango, so 144 degrees. So if I do that, that would take me over here. Yours is going to be a lot more accurate because it's on paper. I'd label it 144 degrees and mango. Then you've got pear, which is 48 degrees. Label it, say what it is, and then you're finally left with kiwi, which is an angle of 72 degrees. And double check it, they should all fit exactly. If they don't, then try measuring it again. But that's how we do our pie chart question. Okay, so in this question, I am shown a parallelogram and a trapezium, and it's telling me that the trapezium has one line of symmetry. So in case you weren't sure which one's a trapezium, which one's a parallelogram, the key is one line of symmetry, and it's over here that we would find our line of symmetry. Now, generally, parallelogram is the one that looks like a wobbly rectangle. So it's like a rectangle whose sides have been slanted. So this is what your typical parallelogram would look like. And a trapezium, the thing about a trapezium is that it needs to have one pair of parallel sides. So it can look like this, or it could look like this. And the difference between the trapezium and the parallelogram is that the parallelogram has two pairs of parallel sides. So this is not a parallelogram because these two sides are not parallel. So step one, I'm asked to calculate the area of a parallelogram. So they've given you the vertical height and the slant height, and that's on purpose to see if you know which height you're actually supposed to be using. So when we've got the parallelogram, it's always, to work out the area, we do the base times by, well, it's called vertical height, but the better word would be perhaps perpendicular height. And what that essentially means is you use this for triangles as well, look at the lengths that you've been given and which two are perpendicular to each other. So for instance, this line and this line, they're not perpendicular. And perpendicular, in case you didn't know, just means at right angles to. So it means they form a right angle. Like in a square, all of the lines are perpendicular and they form these right angles. So this is not a right angle. So these two lines are not perpendicular, but over here we've got 5 centimeters, over here we've got 8 centimeters. That is perpendicular. So that must mean that my base is 5 and my perpendicular height is 8. So it's this side that I would use. Basically, never use the diagonal side, use the vertical height. So in this case, this is straight up vertical. This one is a diagonal height. And the base would appear here as well. It's a parallelogram, so all of the sides are equal, opposite ones. So 5 times 8 is 40, and its area, so I'm going to write centimeters squared. The next part of the question is a little bit trickier, and it's asking me to calculate the perimeter of the trapezium. So perimeter is the distance around the outside of the shape. So that means you can imagine that you're like a prison warden walking around all around. You might have heard people say walk the perimeter. So walk around the outside of building, or in this case the shape. So we've got over here, if I started here and I walked here, I've got 4 centimeters. Then I've got this length here that I need to work out, so this diagonal length. Then I've got this length. If I start walking, let's walk in a straight line. And then I've got this length here, which I also don't know. So the perimeter is going to be 4 plus 10 plus this, which is what I need to find out. So it's a trapezium with one line of symmetry. And what that means is that it's an isosceles trapezium, which means that each part of the trapezium, so if I split it up here, that would be a little rectangle and then two triangles that are the same. They're, what's the word? Congruent. So two congruent triangles. So I can use trigonometry to try and work out what this slant height, where the question mark is, what this slant height is. And the reason I can do that is because over here, this height is 3 centimeters. So I know that this height here will also be 3 centimeters. So if I just draw that triangle down here so we can see it a little bit clearer, we've got a height of 3 centimeters. I can also figure out what this length here must be, and this is because of the fact that the triangle has, the trapezium has one line of symmetry, which means that these two triangles are equal. So if I know that this length here, oh, why did it delete everything? If I know that this length here is 4 centimeters, because this length here is, so opposite sides of a rectangle or anything are equal, then I do 10 take away 4, which is 6 centimeters. So 6 is split into 2, which means that this, so maybe if I get rid of the 10, it might make it a little bit easier. So over here, this is 4 centimeters, and this plus this makes 6 centimeters. So if I do 6 divided by 2, that leaves me with 3 centimeters on each side. So that means that this length here is also 3 centimeters. So actually I don't have to use trigonometry, I can just use Pythagoras. So when you use Pythagoras, if you have two sides and you're trying to find the third side, you just do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So a is the base. So a and b are the two shorter sides, c is the diagonal. In this case, I'm trying to find the diagonal. So I do 3 squared plus 3 squared must equal c squared, which is the diagonal. So 9 plus 9 equals c squared, therefore c squared equals 18, and c is going to be the square root of 18. The inverse of squaring something is square rooting it. So I type into my calculator the square root of 18, which is 3 root 2. I turn it into a decimal, and that gives me 4.24264067. So that means that, let's just get rid of all of this writing. That means this side is 4.242, and this side here is also 4.242. So for perimeter, we ignore the vertical height. For perimeter, we literally use, we have to walk around the outside of the shape. So I've got 4 plus 4.242 plus, so I'm going round, so 4 plus 4.242 plus 10 plus 4.242. So plus 4 plus 10 is 22.4852. And you might, if you got a different answer, it's because you didn't write all of the digits out. So try and write all of the digits out. And it's asking to round it to 1 decimal place. So that would be 22.5. You look at this number, you look next door, and if it's higher than 5, you add 1 more. So 22.5 centimeters. Because of the perimeter, we don't do squared. Okay, so in this question, I'm asked which store is going to be the best value for money. So this is a best buy question where we're having to compare the cost of buying one thing in one place with the cost of that same thing in another place. And this is actually a really good real life question because you're always doing this when you're going shopping in superstores. So I'm told that Waitrose sells mini eggs in 200-gram packets, which normally cost £1.20. So especially with questions like this, there's normally a lot of words in them, and it's good to just untangle the important information that we need. So I know that they normally have, the packets are 200 grams and the normal cost is £1.20. Then I know that Marks and Spencer's sells mini eggs in 300 gram packets, which normally cost £1.60. So this is the normal price. Perry wants to buy 1.8 kilograms of mini eggs for her friends. And lucky for her, both of these shops have offers on for the mini eggs. So for Waitrose, I'm told that you need to buy 2, get the third free. So if you buy 2 packs, you get the third one for free. And in Marks and Spencer's, you get 20% off if you buy 4 packets or more. Which store is going to offer Perry the best value for money? So I know that Perry wants to buy 1.8 kilograms of mini eggs for her friend. So that's what she wants. So what I need to do is figure out how many packs that's going to be in Waitrose and how many packs that's going to be in Marks and Spencer's. So 1.8 kilograms is 1,800 grams. If you've forgotten, then 1 kilogram is equal to 1,000 grams. So to go from kilograms to grams, you multiply by 1,000, and go from grams to kilograms, you divide by 1,000. But 1.8 kilograms is equivalent to 1,800 grams. So to figure out how many packs I'm going to need at Waitrose, I know that they are, the mini eggs come in 200 gram packs. So I'm going to do 1,800 divided by 200. And that gives me 1,800 divided by 200 is 9. So I'm going to need 9 packs if she buys it in Waitrose. In Marks and Spencer's, you get 20% off if you buy 4 packets or more. That's great. But what I was looking for actually is the weight. So 1,800 divided by, in Marks and Spencer's, the weight is 300. So each pack is 300 grams. So I'm going to do 1,800 divided by 300, which is 6. So here I'm going to need to buy 6 packs. So using all of that, I'm going to need to take into account the offers as well, which is frequently the bit that people get confused by. So that's why it's so important to show all of your working, because if you fall at the last hurdle, at least you get all of the marks for coming this far. So I know I need 9 packs and if I buy 2, I get the third free. So essentially I can buy them in multiples of 3, and 3 packs is the cost of 2 packs because you get the third one free. So 3 packs actually costs the equivalent of 2 packs. So if 1 pack at normal price is £1.20, 2 packs is going to be 2 times £1.20, which is £2.40. So therefore, for every 3 packs she buys, she pays £2.40. And she needs 9 packs in total. So how many lots of 3 fit into 9? That's 3 lots. So if 3 packs are £2.40, that means that 9 packs are going to cost her £2.40 times 3, which is 2.4 times 3, £7.20. So using the offer, if she buys 9 packs at Waitrose, that's going to cost her £7.20. Now we want to figure out what to do at Marks and Spencer's. So we know she needs 6 packs. There's not a special offer. If you buy this, you get that. It's just if you buy more than 4, then you get 20% off. And because she needs 6 packs, that's more than 4. So we work out what the cost of 6 packs would be. So 6 packs would be 6 times £1.60. And 6 times £1.60 is £9.60, but because I've bought more than 4 packs, I am going to be able to get a 20% discount. So to get a 20% discount, depends how you do your percentages. You could work out 20% and then subtract it, or you could just times by 0.8. And the reason you're timesing by 0.8 is because if you started with 100% and you've got a 20% discount, you're left with 80%. So 80%, what does percent mean? It means out of 100, And so 80 divided by 100 is 0.8. That's the background knowledge as to why you multiplied by 0.8. But similarly, you can work out 10%, double it to get 20%, and then subtract it. Whatever method you use is great. Multiplies method is just the quickest way, especially for calculator. So £9.60 times 0.8 is £7.68. So if she buys her mini eggs at Marks and Spencer's, she'll be paying £7.68. So when I'm doing a best value for money question, what I want to do to work out what is the best value, it's whatever is cheapest. So therefore, you would say Waitrose offers the best value for money as 1.8 kilograms would cost £7.20 there versus £7.68 at Marks and Spencer's. So always make sure you justify your answer. In this question they didn't specify it, but it's good practice anyway. Okay, so next we've got a compound interest question. So I'm told that Arian and Alden want to invest their money for 5 years in a bank that pays compound interest. Arian invests £1,000 into his bank account at an interest rate of 4.5%. Alden invests £1,200 into his bank account at an interest rate of 4%. And I'm told that Alden earns more interest than Arian at the end of 5 years. How much more? So it's a compound interest question. So what I want to do is, and there are lots of ways that you can do it, but if you've got compound interest, what that means is you're multiplying the money in your account by your multiplier. So for example, for Arian, we've got £1,000 and there's an interest rate of 4.5%, which means an interest rate is basically where the bank kind of gives you free money for keeping your money with them. So you put £1,000 in and they're paying you an interest rate of 4.5%, which means you get 4.5% of that money in your bank account at the end of the year. So the slow way of working it out is by working out what 4.5% of 1,000 is, adding it on, and then working out what 4.5% of the new amount is, adding that on, and doing that for 5 years. But there's a shortcut method which makes your life a lot simpler. So what we do is we work out what the multiplier is. Now, the multiplier is if I know that your original amount is 100%, the original amount is always 100% because that's what you start with. And I know that it's going to increase by 4.5%. What I can do is add those two together. Now you've got a calculator, so I would really recommend using it because so many people get this bit muddled up just because when you're adding decimals, it's easy to just slip up. So we've got 100 plus 4.5. So what does that give you? That gives you 104.5%. And what does 104.5% mean? It means 104.5 divided by 100. Remember, this line here means divide. So if you then divide that by 100, that tells you what your multiplier is. So your multiplier is 1.045. And that's why I really recommend using the calculator, even to do the simple additions, because so many people just accidentally write 1.45. So your multiplier is 1.045. And just to recap, the way you get it is you do 100% plus whatever this is, and then you turn it into a decimal. So 1,000, your original value times by your multiplier. So the formula is original value times by multiplier. And then it's to the power of like whatever the time period is. So it might be minutes, months, or whatever. Usually with compound interest, it's number of years. So it's going to be to the power, in this case, of the number of years that you're investing. So we're told that we invest for 5 years. So I'm going to do it to the power of 5. So the formula is original amount times by a multiplier to the power of the number of years. So type into my calculator 1,000 times 1.045 to the power of 5, and that will tell me how much Arian has. So Arian is 1,000 times 1.045 to the power of 5. which is 1246.181938. Then I can do the same for Aldon. So his original value was 1,200. His interest rate is 4%. So I'm going to do the same thing quickly. So I've got 100% and I add 4%, and that gives me 104%. What does percent mean? It means divided by 100. So if I type that into a calculator, I'm going to get 1.04. So that's my multiplier. Times by 1.04. And again, they also invest for 5 years. So it's going to be to the power of 5. So I've got 1,200 times by 1.04 to the power of 5. And that gives me 1,459.983483. Now, even if you'd just done that, you would get a lot of the marks. But the question says Aldon earns more interest than Arian at the end of the 5 years. So the interest part is like the free money part. If you take away the total, take away how much you invested, that is the interest. So for Arian, the interest earned is going to be 1,246.18, take away how much he invested, which his original value was 1,000. So that gives me 1,246.181938, take away 1,000. So his interest is £246.18, so forth. For Aldon, his interest is going to be the final amount, so 1,459.98, take away 1,200, which was the amount that he originally invested in. So 1,459.9834, take away 1,200, gives me £259.98. Or maybe I should have written all of it out actually. 3483, because they're asking for how much more, so 181938. So then that's how much interest Arian has earned and how much interest Aldon has earned. So to work out how much more Aldon has earned, I'm going to just work out the difference between these two values. And to work out the difference, you do the highest number, take away the lowest number. So I'm going to do £259.98, take away £246.18, and try where you can to enter the full values. So 259.983483, take away 246.181936 gives you £13, and then 801547. We're going to, sorry, I've got a really itchy nose. We're going to round that to, well, it's money, so you round it to 2 decimal places. So that's just £13.80. So Aldon earns £13.80 more than Arian. Okay, so just a simplifying ratio question. We're told that there are 24 giraffes in Wildlife Sanctuary and 32 zebras. I'm told to write down the ratio of the number of giraffes to the number of zebras in the Wildlife Sanctuary, and then give it in its simplest form. So the key thing with ratio is you have to write it in the order that it's given to you. So they say write the giraffes first and then write that to the number of zebras. So this little thing is 2, so like in the ratio of giraffes to zebras, and then we can write down the number. So giraffes, we know there are 24 of them, and we know that there are 32 zebras, so the ratio of giraffes to zebras is going to be 24 to 32. And then I need to write this in its simplest form. So what I can do is find the highest common factor. The highest common factor of 24 and 8 is the largest number that goes into it. Sorry, 24 and 32 is 8. Or what I could do is just start by dividing by 2, and then the answer will become clearer. So if I divide by 2, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side, and that's how you simplify. So that would become 12 to 16. Then I can divide by 2 again. So that would become 6 to 8. And then I can divide by 2 again. So that would become 3 to 4. We could have also done it in one full swoop if you recognised that 8 is a common factor of them both. We always just divide by something that goes into both of them. So 24 divided by 8 is 3 and 32 divided by 8 is 4. That would have been one step, but you can just keep going until you get to something that you can't simplify any further. And that's how we do ratio in its simplest form. Next, I've got a conversion graph. So I'm told that Deanna wants to send her younger sister Ella to a holiday camp, and the conversion graph shows the cost of attending the camp. She has £800 to spend. How many full days can she afford to send her sister away for? So when you've got a conversion graph, it's comparing two things with each other. So in this case, we've got the y-axis that compares the cost of the holiday camp. And over here, we've got the x-axis, which compares the number of days. So for instance, let's say 2 days must cost £300. How do I know that? To read a conversion graph, what we do is we pick what we want to work out. So for example, let's say I want to work out the cost of 2 days. I go up to the graph and then I go across to the axes. Halfway between 200 and 400 is 300. So therefore the cost of 2 days is £300. Now Deanna has £800 to spend. So how many full days can she afford to send her sister away? So £800 is over here, but that's not actually for a full day. It would take me down to here. So I need to find the next place where the next lowest day. So £800 would pay for probably 6.6 days, but that's not a full day. So the next thing I could do is go to 6 days. So 6 days she can afford, and 6 days is going to cost her £700 because £700 is half. Oh, I think there's an error there. Yes, there's an error on this thing. So just imagine the axes wasn't wrong and that this cost was £1,000. And this was 1,200 and this was 1,400 and so forth. Apologies for that. So anyway, 6 days is going to cost her £900, which she also can't afford. So, sorry, I'm just going to sort this graph out and then we'll get back to the question. Okay, so the graph in the exam definitely won't be wrong, but let's look at this question again. So she has £800 to spend. I already worked out that 2 days costs £300. Therefore, 1 day must cost £150. Now, the thing with conversion graphs are it's all going up in direct proportion. So if you know the cost for, like, let's say 1 day, you can just times it by 8 to work out how many 8 days would cost. So we could do it that way. So we know that 1 day costs £150. Therefore, 2 days are going to be 300, as we've already seen. So that's 1 day. That's 2 days. Add on 150. So £450 is how much it's going to cost for 3 days. Does that make sense using our graph? Let's go up to 4. Sorry, go up to 3. Yes, that's 450. And then let's go up to £600 is going to be the cost of 4 days. You can read that off the graph too. 4 days is £600. 5 days, if I go to the graph, is going to be over there. It's halfway, so that's going to be 750. And that's just to show you how you can read the conversion graph. But we could have just figured out how much 1 day is and added it, or another way is we could have just looked and seen, okay, 800 days, £800 takes me here. If I go down the graph, that's like 5 point something days. So therefore the maximum amount of full days she can go for is 5 days. And that also fits here because, as you can see, 5 days cost £750. The next part of the graph tells me that Deanna's mum offers to help with the costs. How much does she need to give Deanna so that Ella can go for 10 full days? So we've got 10 full days here. So let's see, 10 days is going to cost, if I go across, it's exactly halfway between 1,400 and 1,600. So 10 days is 1,500. You can read it off the graph, or what you could have done is, you know that 5 days is 750, so 10 days is going to be 1,500. And if Deanna already has £800, I'd do 1,500 take away £800, which leaves me with £700. So that's how much her mum would need to contribute so that she could go away for the full 10 days. Okay, next I've got an arithmetic sequence, and I need to write an expression for the nth term. So the nth term is like the formula that you use to work out any term in the sequence. And the best way to do it is to start by working out what the difference is between each of the terms. So you can just draw some little arrows as a reminder, and then you think, how do I get from 14 to 11? What do I add or subtract to get to the next term? The fact that it's an arithmetic sequence means you're either going to add or subtract to get to the next term. If they say it's a geometric sequence, that's where you multiply or divide to get to the next term. So anyway, 14 take away 3 gets me to 11, take away 3 gets me to 8, take away 3, take away 3. So I know that this sequence is going down in the 3 times table, so it's the minus 3 times tables. And whatever times tables it is, I'm going to write an n after that. So first, find out what times tables it's going up or down in by working out what the difference is, and just slot an n next to it. Now, if it was the minus 3 times tables, and this is another bit that people really frequently just make little slip-ups on, so I'd encourage you to actually just write the minus 3 times tables out. So the first term in the minus 3 times tables would be minus 3. If you take away 3, then it would be minus 6, then minus 9, minus 12, minus 15, and so forth. And what we're doing, so we're saying it's going down in the 3 times tables, so it's minus 3n. And then we want to work out, how do you get from minus 3 to 14? So minus 3 is here, we pass 0, and then we get to 14. So what must you add to get from minus 3 to 14? So from minus 3 to 0, you add 3, and from 0 to 14, you add 14. So therefore, minus 3 plus 17 gets me to 14. So the nth term of the sequence is minus 3n plus 17. Now, this is a negative sequence. It's a bit harder than positive sequences, but I just thought I'd slip in a negative sequence just to, you know, just in case. So that's how I find the rule of the sequence, and the rule is the other name for the nth term. You work out the difference, you slot that times, that tells you what times tables it's going up or down in, you slot that above, and then you just work out the difference from the original timetable to the sequence that you've got. Then I'm asked, is minus 45 a term in this sequence? So either you could keep the sequence going and go minus 18, you'd continue this one, sorry, so you'd go minus 1 and so forth. Or what you do is you make the nth term equal to the term, like in this case, minus 45. So I'm going to say minus 3n plus 17 equals 45. And then what I have to do is rearrange, solve the equation to work out what n is. If n is a normal number like 1, 5, 7, a whole number, an integer, then it's the term in a sequence, and whatever n is tells you the position. So if it said n is 3, then you'd be like, yes, it's the third term. If it's a decimal, it means it's not in the sequence. So let's see what we'd do. If we were to solve this equation, the first thing I'd do is I'd take 17 from both sides. You can use a function machine to help you with this as well. So you would say, what's happening to n? Well, the first thing is it's being times by negative 3, and then I add 17 to it, and then 45 comes out. So therefore, you know that the first thing you're going to need to do is take 17 and then divide by negative 3. So remember that the function machines are always there for you to use if you need them. So I subtract 17 first. So I'd be left with minus 3n is, and then 45 take away 17 is 28. So minus 3n is 28. And then what do I do next? The function machine tells me I have to divide by -3. So I'm going to divide both sides by -3. So n is going to be 28 divided by -3, which is minus 9.3 recurring. So you would say, no, it isn't, as a term can't be a decimal. I mean, showing you're working is going to be proof enough. So because n is a decimal, it's not a term. And then I'm asked, what is the 30th term in the sequence? So again, I use the rule for the sequence. So this rule comes in very handy for so many different things. And n, what n actually represents is the position. So like, is it the first term? Is it the second term? Is it the third term? So for the first term, you'd say n is 1. For the third term, you'd say n is 3. So for the 30th term, we'd say n equals 30. And we'd substitute n equals 30 into the rule. So if n is 30, that would become -3. And what does -3n mean? It means -3 times by n. So it becomes -3 times by 30. And I'll just put that in brackets, plus 17. So -3 times by 30 is -90. And then -90 plus 17 gives me -90 plus 17, oops, -90. So -90 plus 17 is going to give me -73. So the 30th term is -73. Okay, next I'm told that Leanna organises a raffle to raise money for her school. The prize is an acoustic guitar. Her classmates buy 35 of the raffle tickets and she sells a total of 420 raffle tickets. I then need to find the probability that her classmates do not win the acoustic guitar. So remember, if anything is highlighted in bold, it means read carefully, because it's a place where people frequently make a mistake because they don't read it carefully. So let's make sense of what's going on here. She's organising a raffle to raise money for the school. She sells a total of 420 raffle tickets and her classmates buy 35 of the raffle tickets. So to work out the probability of something happening, you do your chosen thing over the total. So the probability of her classmates winning would be they bought 35 tickets out of a total of 420. So that's the probability of the classmates winning. Now, it says find the probability that her classmates do not win the acoustic guitar. So the probability of winning is 35 over 420, and the probability of them not winning is going to have to give me 420 over 420, because probability always has to sum to 1. It has to make one full thing. So what I can do is I can do 420 take away 35, which tells me that there are 385 raffle tickets left that they did not buy. So therefore the probability of them not winning is going to be 385, because there are 385 raffle tickets that they did not buy, and that's going to be over the total, which is 420. So probability, you always, if you're writing it as a fraction, is whatever you're talking about over the total, and the probability of it not happening, also you could have just done in your calculator 1, actually that's probably a better thing. So the probability of something not happening, you just do 1 take away the probability of it happening. Especially because this is a calculator paper, that might make your life easier. So you just needed to do 1 take away 35 over 420, enter it into your calculator, and it will tell you what that would be. So probability of them not winning is this. Okay, next we've got a frequency table. So we kind of covered this in the pie chart question, but when you've got a frequency table, it's just instead of writing like a tally chart, Frequency just means the amount. So instead of, having little tallies, we just add them all together. So frequency means there are 7 people that have 23 crisps in their packet. Or I haven't read the question yet. Let's read the question first. So Jacob buys some packets of crisps. Okay, so it's not people, it's Jacob. So the frequency is the amount of packets of crisps. So the number of packets that he has bought. So he counts the number of crisps in each packet he buys, and he finds that there are between 23 and 26 crisps in each packet. And the table below gives information about the number of crisps in each packet. So I know that 7 packets have 23 crisps in them, 3 packets have 24 crisps in them, I don't know how many packets have 25, and I know that 5 packets have 26 in them. And I know that the total number of crisps is 488. And complete the table. So what do I know from this table? Well, I know that 7 packets have 23 crisps in them each. So to work out how many total crisps there are, I could do 7 times 23, which is 161 crisps in total. Then I know that 3 packets have 24 crisps in them each. So I could do 3 times 24, which is 72. And I also know that 5 packets have 26 in them, so that can be 26 times 5, which is 130. So I know that in total, so far, I have 161 plus 72 plus 130, which is plus 72 plus 161, 363 crisps so far. Which, if there's a total of 488, I could figure out how many must be missing. So 488, take away 363. 488, take away answer, is 125. So I know that 25 times by this number is going to be 125. So therefore, if I did 125 divided by 5, I'll figure out how many packets of crisps there might be. So 125 divided by 5 is, divided by 25. 125 divided by 25 is 5. So I know that there must have been 5 packets that had 25 crisps in them each. Okay, in this question I'm dealing with a probability tree, and I'm told that Isuf has a bag containing 6 blue and 4 yellow bricks. So the first thing you want to do, if you haven't been given any information, normally they might fill out bits on the probability tree, is actually think about what's going on. So Isuf has a bag that has in total 10 bricks, 6 are blue and 4 are yellow. So let's think about what the probability of getting a blue brick would be. Well, there are 6 blue out of a total of 10 bricks. And for yellow, there are 4 yellow bricks out of a total of 10. So first, it's good to just work out what the actual probability is of each thing. And then I'm told that he picks 2 bricks from the bag. And the first part of the question is to complete the tree diagram. So over here, I've got blue. It wants me to write the probability of blue first. So I'm going to write 6 over 10 here. And for yellow, the probability is going to be 4 over 10. Now, what's important is that on each of your branches, the probability always needs to add to 1. So if, for example, you were just told that this probability here is 6 over 10, you could work out automatically that this needs to be 4 out of 10 because it needs to add to 1. So that's the first thing that you need to know about probability trees. The little branches, they add to 1. The next thing is that this is probably a slightly more difficult probability tree than you might be given, because it requires you to think carefully. So if, for example, he's picked a brick from the bag, there are 6 blue bricks to begin with. If he's taken one of those blue bricks out, then the chance of getting another blue brick would be 5, because there are 5 blue bricks left out of a total of 9. So essentially I'm subtracting 1 because I've taken one of the blue bricks out. So over here, my probability on this side is always going to be over 9 because one of the bricks has been removed. So I go along this line, and if I've picked a blue brick, there are still 4 yellow bricks left, so I'm going to write the probability for yellow is 4 out of 9. It's only following this line, blue and then yellow. The yellow bricks haven't been affected. However, if I go down the other route, which is over here, so let's say I've taken a yellow brick out, then what's the probability of getting a blue brick? Well, if I've taken a yellow brick out, I know that there's going to be 9 bricks left because a brick has gone, but I haven't touched the blue bricks. So there's still going to be 6 blue bricks left out of a total of 9. And then for yellow, if I've already taken a yellow brick, I'm 1 yellow brick down out of a total of 9. So that's how I'd fill that out. Now, this is more difficult than it's likely going to be if it does come up. Normally, they're not going to have conditional probability, so you don't have to worry too much. I'm just showing you just in case that one of the more difficult types comes up. So complete the tree diagram. That's all I'm doing. You literally write the probability of those things happening. And the key thing when filling it up is that the branches, so this and this needs to add up to 1, this and this needs to add up to 1, and this needs to add up to 1. Okay, so now it's asking me to work out what the probability is that he picks 2 yellow bricks. So when you're working out the probability of something happening from the probability tree, what you do is you go along that route. So yellow is here, so I'm going to go along the route over here. So I'm going to do 4/10, and then another yellow brick would be along here. So when you're going along the probability tree, to work out the probability, you multiply along the branches. So that's the key thing. Oh, you multiply along the branches. So I'm going to do 4/10 times by 3/9 because that's the route I've taken. So 4 times 3 is 12 and 10 times 9 is 90. So that's going to be 12 over 90. Okay, so in this question, it's a calculator question. So literally it's just asking you to type things into your calculator, but it's important that we know how to use it. So if you're given a fraction, something that's looks like this with a numerator and a denominator, the first thing you want to do is press the fraction button so that you can actually deal with things bit by bit. So you open up your fraction button, and then over here we're told you need to find the cubed root. So we press the cubed root button. If you don't know how to do it, you press shift, and then you see where the square root button is here, and you press that number there. So the shift lets you, I don't know how it is on your calculator, but over here, all the little blue things, if you press shift, you get to access them. So you write the cubed root and you type that in. So you write 17.8 take away 2.6. So that's what your calculator display should look like. Next, you use the arrows to move to the denominator, and we type in what we see. So we've got sine 45, and whenever you're typing in anything to do with trigonometry, make sure you close the bracket at the end of it. So sine 45 plus 0.036 squared. So that's what it should look like on your calculator. It should look exactly like what it says on the in the exam. Then you press equals, and it's really important that you actually write down everything that you see on your calculator display. So don't round. So you've got 4.4858568883. So you write down everything, and then it says give your answer to 3 significant figures. So 3 significant figures means the first 3 a significant figure. The first significant figure is your first non-zero digit, and then every significant figure after that can be 0. So for example, if you had 0.039 whatever, this is the first significant figure. But if you had 3002, this is the first significant figure, this is the second significant figure, and that's the third significant figure. So zeros can be significant figures, but the first significant figure can't be a 0. Because over here, zeros are place value holders. So 3 significant figures means this is my first significant figure, second, third. So I'm going to be rounding to this. So I look next door, it's 5 or more, so I'm going to round up. I'm going to add 1 to my circle digit, so that would become 4.5. 0.49. Okay, next I'm told that Alahan and Chris share £5,500 in the ratio 2:3. So sometimes it's helpful to just draw things out just to get an idea of what's going on. So we've got Alahan and Chris, and they share 5,500 in the ratio 2:3. So if I just draw that out so that I can visualize it. So Alahan gets 2 parts for every 3 parts that Chris gets, and they're splitting 5,500 into these parts. So essentially, each time they split, they're splitting into 5 parts. So if I did 5,500 divided by 5, that tells me that 1 part must equal 1,100. So this is 1,100, this is 1,100, this is 1,100, and so forth. So I can use that to work out how much they get. So Alahan initially must get 1,100 times 2 is 2,200. And then 1,100 times 3 is going to be 3,300. So that's how much they've split their money into. I'm then told that Chris is feeling generous and gives 65% of his share to Alahan. So he gives 65% of this to Alahan. So I work out 65%. There's loads of ways I can do it, but the multiplier way is the best. So I do 3,300 times 0.65, because 65%, what does that mean? It means 65 over 100. 65 divided by 100 is 0.65. What does of mean? It means multiply. So if you had to work out 65% of 3,300, turn that into 0.65. Of means times, and that's the quickest way you can work out percentage on a calculator. So 65% of 3,300 is 2,145. So that's how much he gives to Alahan. So Alahan originally had 2,200, so now he's going to have 2,200 plus 2,145. So he's going to have 4,345, and Chris has just lost 2,145, so we're going to do 3,300, take away 2,145, which gives 1,155. So, and that's the first part. And then I am asked to write the new ratio in its simplest form. So you've got a calculator, so this should be quite straightforward. What we're doing is we are just dividing until we get to a point where we can't divide anymore. So the first thing I'd probably divide by is 4345. I divide it by 5. So that gives me 869. And then 1155 divided by 5 is 231. And I'm dividing by 5 because I know that both sides of this ratio are multiples of 5 as they end in 5. Now it's a little bit trickier, so I might try dividing by 3. So 869 divided by 3. Oh, I can't do, so I'm not going to try that. Maybe I'll try dividing. So if you ever get stuck, you always want to try dividing by the prime numbers. So I'll just write them out here. So it's always good to divide by one of these. It's the quickest way to get you there. So I'm going to try 869 divided by 7. See if that works. That doesn't work. 869 divided by 11. That works. So that's going to be 79. And 231 divided by 11. Does that work? To 21. So 79 to 21. I know that the factors of 21, the only thing that goes into 1 would be 1 times 21 and 3 times 7. So if 79 doesn't divide by 21, which it doesn't, if 79 doesn't divide by 7, and if 79 doesn't divide by 3, I know that I've simplified it fully. If you're feeling super confident with simplifying ratios, I will show you a little trick that for some of you this might help. So the quickest way to simplify it is to actually write this as a fraction in your calculator. So if you wrote 4,345 divided by 1,155, it would automatically simplify it to you. And it would say it's 79 over 21. But then the trick is that you need to know that this would simplify to 79 and that would simplify to 21. So you need to know how to write it. So sometimes that confuses people, which is why, if you don't understand that way, just simplify by dividing each side. Okay, next I've got a probability table. So I'm told that Sora picks up a biased dice. The table shows the probabilities that dice will land on 1, 2, 3, 4, and on 5. And that Sora rolls the biased dice 450 times. And my job is to work out an estimate for the total number of times the dice will land on a 4 or a 6. So there's a few things I need to do here. First of all, remember that probability must sum to 1. So the probability of rolling any of these numbers on the dice, they must all add to 1. So the first thing I can do is figure out what all of these add up to. So if I did 0.33 plus 0.01 plus 0.11 plus 0.23 plus 0.15, that gives me 0.83. So I know that all of this sums to 0.83. So this little missing bit must be 1 take away 0.83. So if I do 1 take away 0.83, I find out the missing probability, which is 0.17. So I've filled out the probability table there. Now I need to work out an estimate for it landing on a 4 or a 6. So to work out an estimate of a probability, or this is also called relative frequency, what I do is I write down the probability of that event happening. So in this case, I've got 0, so estimate of it landing on 4. The probability of it landing on a 4 is 0.23. And what I do is I multiply that by the number of trials. So in this case, the number of trials is how many times Sora has thrown it. So that's going to be times by 450. So the probability that it's going to land on a 4 is 0.23 times by 450, which is 103.5. Now let's do it for it landing on a 6. So an estimate of landing on a 6 is going to be 0.17 times 450, which is 0.17 times 450 is 76.5. And using the OR rule in probability, the probability of this or that happening, what you do is you add the probabilities together. So probability of it landing on 4 or 6, I would add the probabilities together. So 103.5 plus 76.5 gives me 180. So the probability of it landing on a 4 or a 6 is 180, which makes sense because so if I'm just talking about the 4 and the 6, I've got 0.17 here. I've got 0.23 plus 0.17. So 0.23 plus 0.17 is 2/5, which is 0.4. So the shortcut way I could have done it is just did 0.4 times 450, which is 180. So either you work out the probabilities separately and then add them, or you first add the probabilities and then multiply by the number of trials. But either way, 180 times. Next, I've got a bearing. So I'm told that the bearing of ship A from ship B is 132 degrees, and I haven't been given any diagram, so it's up to me to kind of draw my own diagram. So this bearings, the main thing people get confused on with bearings is the whole from thing. So let's try and break that down. So the bearing of ship A from ship B is 132 degrees. So let's just draw two due north signs. So with bearings, it all stems from the knowledge of parallel lines. So that's why we always start from due north, because If we do that, then all of our bearings are going to be parallel, and we can use the knowledge of parallel lines. So the bearing of ship A from ship B is 132 degrees. So let's just think about this. We know that 90 degrees would be here, 132 degrees would be something like this. So which way are we going to do it? Wherever it says from, that's where we start from. So we'd say that this would be B, because we know that the bearing has to look like this. 132 degrees is roughly going to be like that. So I can just draw this quick sketch, and I know that the bearing of ship A from ship B is 132 degrees. So 132 degree angle is over here. The way we do bearings is we start from due north and we always go clockwise. So you can just first of all just try and visualize what that angle would look like, and therefore where each thing would be in relation to each other. So I'm now asked to work out the bearing of ship B from ship A. So this is the key thing. So from ship A means I'm going to start from here. And the way we do bearings is we start from due north, so from straight up, and we go clockwise. So you start from due north, you go clockwise until you reach the line. So the line is this that we've drawn from B to A. This is like the shortest direction that you can get there. So I'm going to need to work out, I start from due north, so I'm going to go clockwise. So this angle here, that's what the bearing of ship B from ship A is going to be. And that's where people get confused a lot of the time, because they just work out this angle here. Now this angle here is going to actually be very important to us, because we can use the knowledge of parallel lines to help us. So I know that this angle and this angle are what you'd call co-interior angles. So therefore they must sum to 180. So what I'd do is I'd do 180, take away 132, which is 48 degrees, and figure out that this little angle here is 48 degrees. However, what I'm interested in is this whole angle here, because with bearings, you start from due north. So that's why I'm starting from here, and you go clockwise until you reach the line. So it's all this turn that I need to work out. Now, what I do know is that angles at a point sum to 360. And that's how I can work out what this angle here must be. So I do 360, take away 48. So 360, take away 48 is 312 degrees. And therefore, the bearing of ship B must be 312 degrees. So the common thing that people do is they either do 360 take away 132, or they just say 48. So the key thing is you start from where it says from, and then you go clockwise until you reach a line. Okay, next we've got density and trigonometry all thrown into one. So the diagram shows a prism, and I'm told the prism has a mass of 2.84 kilograms, and I need to work out what the density is. So how do I work out density? Well, density is mass over volume. That's a formula you just need to know. So in order to work out the density, they've told me the mass. So the density of this prism is going to be 2.84 divided by the volume. But I don't know what the volume of this prism is. So what I'm going to need to do is work that out. So how do you work out the volume of any prism? What you need to do is you need to work out the area of the cross section, and the cross section is this little bit here that I shaded. It's the bit that if you pushed it through the whole prism, it would look exactly the same. So if I pushed that through over here, I would get the same shape, and if I pushed it through even more over here, it's the same shape. So the cross section is the bit that if you push it backwards and forwards, it stays the same. So area of cross section times by the length. So the length is the bit that you're pushing through, if that makes sense. So that would be here. So for this prism, it's a triangle, so I'm going to need to do area of the triangle times by 12. Now, obviously this is a 5-mark question, so it's going to be a little bit trickier than just working out the area of a triangle. How do you work out the area of a triangle? You need to work out the base times by the perpendicular height, and then you divide by 2. So frequently you just say base times height divided by 2, but what's important is that it's the perpendicular height. So we've been given the perpendicular height here, so that's 6.4, but we haven't been given the base. So that's the thing that we're going to need to work out. So let's just take that separately. Let's take this triangle separately and think about what we've been given. We know the height is 6.4. We know the slant height over here is 8.9, but what we really need is this base here in order to work out what the area is. So what I can do is, oh, I don't need to use trigonometry. I can just use Pythagoras for that. So I've got Pythagoras here because I've got 2 sides and I need to work out the third. So I've got my longest side, so I know that I'm going to do c squared take away a squared equals b squared. So if you've been given the hypotenuse, the longer side, you subtract to work out the shorter side. So that's going to be 8.9 squared take away 6.4 squared is going to give me b squared. So let's just type that into a calculator. 8.9 squared take away 6.4 squared is 38.25 equals b squared. And therefore, if b squared is 38.25, b is going to be the square root of 38.25. So I just write the square root of answer is 6.18465. So therefore, the area of the triangle is going to be so I figured out that this length here is 6.18. So I'm going to do 6.18. Well, I'm just going to press answer in my calculator because your calculator saves everything. So if you just don't press anything and you press times by 6.4 divided by 2 equals, and then times by 12, that's going to give me the area of the triangle, and then I times it by 12 to work out the volume. So maybe we'll break that down into a few steps just so that we're all clear on what's happening. So area of the triangle, I'm going to do 6.18 times by 6.4 divided by 2, base times height divided by 2, which is, so my full thing should be 237.49, but let's break it down. So 6.18 times 6.4 divided by 2 is 19.776, which I'm then going to times by 12 because that's the area of the triangle, and then I times it by the length to work out the volume. So times by 12 gives me 237.49. So that's how, so I now have the volume of the prism. And I've lost my calculations, hopefully you won't, but it was, so the volume is 237.49, and I need to work out the density. So what did it say density was? Density is mass over volume. They've told me what the mass is, which is 2.84, and I've worked out that the volume is 237.49. So I'm just going to do 2.84 divided by 237.49, which is 0.01195839825. And it's actually said give your answer to, so density is mass over volume. So I know that this is going to be 0.01195 kilograms per centimetre cubed, because the volume is in centimetres cubed, and the mass is in kilograms. So either what you could have done is turned the kilograms into grams first, and therefore your density would be 2,840 divided by 237.49. So if we did that, we'll get one answer. Or you've got kilograms now, so what do you do to turn kilograms into grams? You times by 1,000, so you times your answer by 1,000, so that would be 11.95839.825, which should be the same as if I did 2,840 divided by 237.49. And my answer might be a little bit more rounded because I lost my full answer and I didn't type everything in here. So as long as you got something along these lines, that's absolutely fine. And don't worry too much if you didn't get the last bit where it says give your answer to the nearest gram per centimetre cubed, because that is, you know, it's a lot of work that you've had to do for this question. But do just try and read the units. And there are two ways of doing it. Either turn the kilograms to grams here, or at the end, in this question, I'm told that a number n is rounded to one decimal place, and the result is 13.6. And I need to write an expression in terms of n for the error interval of this number. So it's a lot of words, but if you ever see this thing, error interval, you can disregard because, you know, sometimes people just tell me what you want me to do. Just tell me to write an error interval, and the words confuse people. Anyway, you see error interval, they tell you what it's rounded to. That's the information that you need to extract from the question. So the result is 13.6 after it's been rounded to one decimal place. So what you want to do is think, okay, 13.6. What are my options? If it didn't round to 13.6, what would it round to one decimal place? So essentially, what's the one decimal place above and below? So the one decimal place above would be 13.7. The one decimal place below would be 13.5. So what I'm always looking for is the halfway point. What is the minimum my number could possibly have been before it would have rounded down? And what's the maximum it could have been before it would have rounded up? So that's halfway between 13.5 and 13.6, which is going to be 13.55. If it was any lower, it would round down to 13.5 and it couldn't round to 13.6. And similarly, if it was 13.65, that's when it would round up to 13.7. So it can't actually be 13.65, but it can be anything up to 13.65. And then what we do is we just drag this down to create our error interval. So 13.55 is the lowest it could possibly be. And if it was 13.55, it would still round up to 13.6. So I say 13.55 is less than or equal to, and in this case it's n, sometimes it might be x, it's just the number, which has to be less than 13.65. And this is the key thing. We don't write less than or equal to, because if it was 13.65, it would round up. So by just having this, where this one is less than or equal to, but here it's just less than, it includes every possible number over here, because the reality is they've done something. The result is 13.6 after it's been rounded. So actually the number could be 13.57. That would still round to 13.6, or it could be 13.63. We don't know what it is. We just know that it has to be in between 13.55 and 13.65. So that's how we do our error interval. Next, we've got some inequalities. So what does this mean? It means -6 is less than or equal to n, which is less than 2. I'm told that n is an integer. Integer just means a whole number, so no decimals. And I need to write down the greatest possible value of n. So I know that n has to be less than 2, which means it cannot be 2. And the next whole number below 2 is 1. So the greatest possible value of n is 1. I'll show you on the number line why that is. So if you think about it, -6 over here and 2 is over here. So -6 is less than or equal to n. So could it be -6? Yes. Could it be -5? Yes, 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 yes. Could it be 2? No, it can't be 2 because it's less than 2. So that's why the largest possible number would be 1. Now on the number line, I need to show the inequality. So all I do is I'm like, okay, it's between -6 and 2. I'm going to draw 2 circles above -6 and one above 2. And because I know that my number can be -6, so it's -6 is less than or equal to, I colour the inequality in. So if it's like this, you colour the little ball in. If it's not, then it's just left blank because that shows it can't be that number. And then you just join it together. And that shows you that it could be anything in between these, but it can't actually be 2. The last bit is solving an inequality. So this is exactly the same as what you do if you were solving an equation. So we've got 3/2m plus 5. Let's imagine it equaled 7 for a bit and just solve it like a normal equation. So what would you do? And I'm just going to change it just so that I don't confuse you. But just imagine it's an equal sign. What would you do? The first thing you do is you'd subtract 5 from both sides. So you've got 3/2m is less than 7 take away 5 is 2. And then what would we do? Well, I know that 3/2m means 3/2 times by m. Even though it's a fraction, it's a little bit more confusing. Number in front of the algebra means they're being multiplied. So that means that m is being multiplied by 3/2. So what do I need to do to both sides? I need to divide by 3/2. And this is a calculator paper, which is why it's absolutely fine that you're having to do these trickier things. So 2 divided by 3/2 is going to give you 4/3. And that's all. So m is less than 4/3. If you kept this as equal sign, then just remember at the end to turn it back into what the inequality told you to. Okay, next we've got some simultaneous equations. So once again, these are the trickiest kind of simultaneous equations you're going to get because it requires, well, it's just the trickiest kind you'll get. But you've got a calculator to help you with any of the difficult numeracy. So when you've got simultaneous equations, and especially if it's the trickier kind, the first thing you want to do is make sure that one of your variables are equal. So you're like, okay, I've got x over here, I've got y over here, none of them are equal. So what I'm going to do is manipulate the equations by multiplying them to make one, either the x is equal or the y is equal. So it doesn't really matter which one you pick. The lowest common multiple of 4 and 6 would be 12, and for 3 and 5 it would be 15. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to do the x's, make the x's the same. So I've identified that the lowest common multiple of 4 and 6 is 12. For you, you might have automatically thought, oh, I'm going to change my y's, and that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to do it with the x's. So what do I do to turn 4 into 12? I need to multiply by 3. So I'm going to multiply this whole equation by 3. And what do I do to turn 6 into 12? I multiply by 2. So first step is I'm going to multiply my equations. So 4 times 3 is 12x. 3 times 3 is 9y. And -3 times 3 is -9. I'm going to do the same. So 6 times 2 is 12x. -5 times 2 is -10y, and 24 times 2 is 48. So the next thing I'm going to do is, now I've got my x variables are the same, and what I need to decide is whether I want to add them or subtract them in order to eliminate them. So basically I can try both if I'm confused. So I can say, okay, 12 plus 12 equals, and 12 minus 12 equals. So 12 plus 12 gives me 24. So if I added them, I would not eliminate them. 12 minus 12 gives me 0. So that tells me I'm going to put this big negative sign here, and I'm going to subtract the equations. So I'm going to do 12 take away 12, which is 0. Then I'm going to have to do 9 take away -10. That's why it's good to have this negative right in front of you to remind you. And maybe do the working to the side. So 9 take away -10 becomes 9 plus 10. which is 19. So I'm left with 19y equals minus 9 minus 48. And remember, you've got your calculator for all of the difficult negative things. So minus 9 minus 48 is minus 57. So I've subtracted the equations, and now what I want to do is divide by 19 to figure out what y is. So y is going to be minus 57 divided by 19, which is minus 3. So I've worked out that my y is equal to negative 3. That's step one, because to solve simultaneous equations, you need to figure out what the y is, what the x is. And of course, they're not always going to be y and x, but, you know, the two variables. So you've worked out what one of your variables is. You know that y is negative 3. You pick one of the equations now, and you can go back to just the easiest equation. So which one's the easiest? I'm going to probably say this one. So let's write it out. 4x plus 3y equals minus 3. We know that y is minus 3, so I'm going to say 4x plus 3 times minus 3 must be minus 3. So 3 times negative 3. So 3 times negative 3 is going to give you negative 9. So I'm just doing this step by step. So this is the bit that I'm working out. 3y means 3 times negative 3, because I've worked out that y is negative 3. And remember, I'm adding this, and when you're adding a negative, you want to be careful. So that would become 4x plus minus. When you've got a plus and a minus next to each other, that becomes a minus. So 4x minus 9 equals minus 3. What do you do to solve it? You add 9 to both sides. So 4x is minus 3 plus 9, which is 6. And then if 4x equals 6, the last part you're going to divide by 4. So x is going to be 6 over 4, which is 3 over 2, which is 1.5. So the tricky part for this one is that it's got negatives in it and it's got fractional answer. But you do have a calculator, so that should take a little bit of the pressure off for you. Okay, so in this question, I'm told that the normal price of a laptop is reduced by 15% in a sale. And the sale price of the laptop is £1,020. So imagine literally going into a store, seeing an item, and you're given the sale price. You don't know what the original price is, you just know the sale price, and you know that in the sale, everything has been reduced by 15%. So when we start off with anything, like the original price is 100%. And if you take away 15%, what are you left with? You're left with 85%. So that means the price that you're seeing, this £1,020, must be 85% of the original price. So I know that 85% is 1,020. Now there's quite a few ways that you can do reverse percentages, but I think the best way is to actually say what's going on. So we know that 85% of the price is 1,020. What we can do from there is literally think to ourselves, okay, if I know what 85% is, I can work out what 1% is, because how do you get from 85 to 1? You divide by 85. So let's do 1,020 divided by 85, which is 12. So I know that 1% is £12. And if I know what 1% is, I can easily get to what 100% is by multiplying by 100. So 100% is going to be 12 times by 100, which is 1,200. So that must be the normal price of the laptop. What I can do to double check is, how do you work out 85% of something? You times by 0.85. So does this work? 1,200 times by 0.85. Yep, that takes me back to 1,020. And the trick is to do reverse percentages. If you understand all of this, you could work backwards. So because we know this, if I didn't know what this is, to work out this, question mark times by 0.85 is 1,020. So therefore 1,020 divided by 0.85 would get me to my original, but that's kind of like, you know, the more advanced way of doing it if you understand exactly what's going on, and people frequently forget, which is why I'd say this is probably the better way. but you pick whatever works best for you. And now we are at the last question. So just some algebraic simplification. So expand and simplify. You've got a double bracket. The best thing I would say when you've got this is just draw out the grid, because the amount of people that just make a silly mistake because they forgot one tiny little bit of the equation. So when you've got the grid, you write up the first bracket. So we've got 5x plus 2. What we do is we split it up into 2. So we've got 5x plus 2. We just split it up. Then the next bracket we split over here. We've got 3x minus 4. And then all we're doing is we're multiplying. So we've got 5x times by 3x. So 5 times 3 is 15. And x times x is going to give me x squared. You can break it up even further. So 5 times x times 3 times x. And please do this if you need to, because it doesn't matter how long it takes or what you do. What matters is that you get it. So you've got 5 times 3, which is 15. And x times x, which is x squared. And that's why it becomes 15x squared. Then we've got 2 times 3x, which is going to become 6x, 5x times minus 4, 5 times minus 4 is minus 20, so that'll be minus 20x, and minus 4 times 2, which is minus 8. So what we do is that's the first step, and then we write out everything that's in our bracket, so in our grid. So we've got 15x squared plus 6x, and you just assume that it's a positive if there's no negative sign in front of it, minus 20x, and then minus 8. And what you're going to notice is that these two terms here, these middle terms, are always going to be able to be simplified. That's why it says expand. Expand means multiply out and then simplify. So 6 take away 20 is going to be minus 14, and that is going to be your final answer over here. So that's how we expand double brackets. Now I need to, for the next question, factorize. So when I'm factorizing a quadratic, that means you've got an x squared, an x, and then just a number. You're going to look for factors of just the number. So what are the factors of 21? I can make 21 by doing 1 times 21 or 3 times 7. So these are my factor pairs, and you need to choose one of these that is also, so it needs to multiply to make 21 and then add or subtract to make minus 10. So this one's a little bit of a tricky one. So let's have a think. I've got 3 and 7 or 1 and 21, and they need to multiply together to make 21. So I know that I could either do 3 times 7 to make 21 or minus 3 times minus 7 to make 21, because you can only make a positive number by multiplying 2 positives or 2 negatives. So do any of these options, and also similarly it could be 1 times 21 or minus 1 times minus 21, but hopefully you'll see that there's no way to create 10 from minus 1 and minus 21, so you would have gone for this one. So which of these two options gives me negative 10x? Is 3 plus 7 gives me positive 10, minus 3 plus minus 7 gives me minus 10. So it's going to be negative 3 times by negative 7. So you find your two factors, two numbers that multiply together to make 21, and then add or subtract together to make minus 10. And then you put them in the bracket. So you've got x minus 3 and then x minus 7. And to double check if you've got it right, you can just expand the brackets back out. So over here, you've got x minus 3, x minus 7. X times x gives you x squared. X times minus 7 is minus 7x. Minus 3 times x is minus 3x. And minus 3 times minus 7 is plus 21. If we simplified that, minus 3 minus 7 is minus 10. And that is taking us back to the original, so you know that this is correct. But that's only to double check. And for the last question, it's drawn a little bit small, so I'm going to just write it out a little bit bigger. So you've got 24 x to the power of 6 y to the power of 7 divided by 6x y to the power of 4. So what we've got over here is essentially, we could split it up to 3 fractions, or we just think about our laws of division. So when you're dividing indices, let's say you've got x to the power of 8 divided by x to the power of 6. When you're dividing indices, so when dividing indices, you subtract the powers. So x to the power of 8 divided by x to the power of 6 is going to give me x to the power of 2. You just subtract these two. So actually you could write it like this, which is then x to the power of 2. So I'm going to do this bit by bit. First, I'm going to divide the numbers. So what's 24 divided by 6? That would leave me with just 4. Then, what's x to the power of 6? So let's write it out like this, because remember this line here means divide. So x to the power of 6 divided by x, and anything that it doesn't have a power to it is just to the power of 1. So that's going to be x to the power of 6 minus 1, which is x to the power of 5. So I'm going to write x to the power of 5. And then for the last bit, you've got y to the power of 7 divided by y to the power of 4, which is y to the power of, well, 7 take away 4, which is y to the power of 3. So that's how we'd do something complicated like that. You divide the numbers together first, so 24 divided by 6. Then you write each of these out separately and you work them out and you put it all together like that. So that's the end of this predicted paper. Obviously there's so many more topics that could come up. If I were you, I would look back on the predicted paper 1 and any of the topics that didn't come up, use those to revise from as well, and make sure that you just feel confident in all of the topics that didn't come up. But thank you for watching and good luck.